That's disgusting. I never hear that.
It's not working, okay?
I'm sorry to hear that.
I've just been told the microphones aren't working. Are they on?
Yep.
Yeah, they are.
All right.
Hello. Only those of us who are full of hot air can be heard.
Let's start with the Pledge of the Allegiance, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everybody. The first thing I'd like to ask is that if you do have a phone, please turn it to silent for the duration of the meeting. And if you do want to address the board, there are forms to fill out at the back of the room. And if you would turn those over to Mr. Bloom, who's in the blue shirt there, we'll get you in front of the board to speak. And with that in mind, do we have anybody that would like to
Yes,
speak?
we do. Up first is Dolores Lynn Scott.
Dolores Lynn Scott, Walden Lakes Drive. I'm going to give you the same talk I've gave you since 2003, but now they've done our banks, but they're not staying.
They're not what?
They're not staying. They're falling in. And I know you've looked at them, Margaret, and Chris has looked at them. And I know you plan to fix it, but the man isn't doing anything about the sod. And he laid fresh sod on top of grass. Everybody knows that won't live. And he's messed up our whole yard coming through, and he hasn't done anything. That's been since April. Well, anyway, I want you to make sure that they take care of that before you pay them off and let them out of here. And I know that you saw it, so I'm not worried about that. I
And
just
Chris-
wish they'd done that bad one first, so it would have had a chance to get the grass settled, and then it wouldn't have slipped in again.
And I actually was speaking with Chris about this just right before the meeting, and he's obviously aware of it also, and not just your yard, but a couple of the other ones. And I think you said you were gonna be back out there tomorrow, Chris, is that right? And he's dedicated to that, it's gonna be fixed, and they're not gonna get paid until it is, so.
Okay, then I'm gonna quit badgering you, and I'm gonna give you a chance to fix it, and hopefully they'll do it right this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Joe Schofield.
Thank you. I'm Joe Schofield. I live in Pelican Preserve, Carina neighborhood, in the area that's being discussed to be conveyed over to the CDD. And I understand that there is a request to perhaps move that time frame up from, I think, October, November into August or September. And I would encourage you not to allow that to happen. There are many issues that we're looking into that need to be further identified and resolved, such as cracks in gutters, sidewalk with holes, pipes sticking up in communities. And we're in the process of doing that, but I would encourage you to give us the time to complete our study, put our report together, process it through to the proper channels, and then move forward from that standpoint. So that's my spiel for the day.
Margaret, questions?
Go ahead.
Joe, are you talking water, sewer, irrigation, or are you talking stormwater and roads, or are you talking
Well,
about
I'm
everything?
talking about the roads, the sidewalks, the gutters, and the pipes that connect the ponds. There's a hole in the.
The pipes that connect the
Pipes that connect the ponds together. I
Okay.
have a video of a hole in a pipe with water coming into the pipe from the outside that I brought to the attention of WCI 2 years ago.
Is this one of the side ponds into the main flowway?
This is a pond on Julia Drive, on the east and west side of Julia Drive.
But I mean, is it a pond interconnect, or is it going into the
It's a
flowway?
pond interconnect. The water
sorry.
is
Street to pond.
street
Oh,
to pond.
inlets.
Yes.
Okay.
And the water is ingressing through a hole about the size of my thumb into that pipe. And I brought that to the attention of WCI 2 years ago, several times since then. We had 2x4s left on the surface of the sidewalks that have now rotted out and left holes in the sidewalk. That's obviously a problem for somebody walking on it if they trip. I'm not sure who would end up being responsible, but obviously there could be a lawsuit if somebody falls and hurts themselves. They should be corrected. So I would encourage you to give us time to do our thorough study, get a report put together, and have time to have Lennar address those issues.
Typically, at least in my experience, is that the street inlets to the point of connection are not televised. They only televise the main line. Are you televising those also?
We televise everything.
I televised
Thinking
it.
of break is
I've got
on our
two.
punch list.
I'm sorry.
And the water leak potential is on our punch list right now.
Madam Chair, and just for the record, the second voice, besides Mr. Tinkles, was that of Mr. Gepper in the audience? Please, no, just so that Marilyn, when she's doing the minutes.
Well, they had a company come through by the name of Sewer Viewer that did that work. They dropped hydraulic fluid in the street. It was cleaned up once. The second time, nobody would clean the hydraulic fluid up. I just noticed that one section of the road has been replaced, but there are other areas in the roadway that still have that hydraulic fluid, which is,
How is your punch list being conveyed to Tetra Tech?
I have nothing to do with Tetra Tech.
I'll be talking about that.
Okay.
I'll let Phil handle that. I'm working on a work group, but this is just my own observations, and
Okay.
this is things I've been talking to people about for 2 years. The holes in the concrete I've been talking to for more than 2 years, and now the wood is rotted out, and there's holes 2 to 3 inches wide roughly, and 1 inch to maybe 2 inches deep where the wood is rotted away. Nobody seems to take any attention to this or pay any attention, and in my investigations through my little community, I've had 4 or 5 people, I have 40 people, 50 people have already sent me emails of identifying problems, which I may already have done on my own, but I'll coordinate that. But many of them have made the statement they've contacted WCI and been blown off. They just don't get any cooperation or help. And I just would stress, please give us time to do the proper work, do the proper investigation, perhaps bring some engineering folks in that can look at and assess the problems, and then move forward.
I know how people get anxious on this. I've had 40 years of it. If you can encourage your residents to go to a common group, either you or Bob.
We are doing that.
And then come to Chris, it sure makes this a heck of a lot easier to control.
That's the road we're heading in.
And that's the road we're heading in. I've talked to Chris the other day at the P-PAC meeting, our first chance to meet him, but I'm just, as a personal person living in that community, I'm very concerned that I'm gonna get stuck like the people in Gateway are with a $20 million retention pond problem. We don't need that in Pelican Preserve. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would somebody repeat that for me?
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Basically, I'm coming in to introduce myself. I am Veronica LeBlanc with Sanibel Captiva Community Bank. And I understand that you're looking at purchasing the building for the Boy Scouts building.
Girl.
So I want to let you know if we could allow, or you all could allow us the opportunity to work with you. We're always looking at helping the community. So if there's a chance that we can meet with you and, talk about it, we're here to assist.
Great.
You said you were
Great.
with Sanibel Captiva Bank, is that
Yes.
right?
And we just
Okay.
opened here in Gateway
Yes.
back in March.
Okay.
So
Till Bank
we are
of
Sanibel
America.
Captiva. We're not just in the island, we're here.
Great.
Thank you,
All right,
welcome.
thank you.
Did you get her last name?
LeBlanc.
Phil Easy. Pelican Preserve.
3 years.
Phil Measy, 9296 Trieste Drive. I'm representing PPAC today on 2 issues. The first of which is the signs on Pelican Preserve Boulevard. The community doesn't want them there. We don't want to have a licensing agreement with WCI to keep them there. Our Architectural Control Committee for the Master Association has already sent a letter to Darren McMurray saying we don't want them there. So I am asking that the CDD take the action to have them removed either by WCI, if not by WCI, then by the staff of the CDD. Those, we have a legal right to take them out. We want them gone.
Madam Chairman, at the appropriate time, I intend to make a motion to that effect. If you'd like it now, I'll do it now. If not, I'll wait.
Let's wait. until he finishes. Let's let Mr. Measy finish.
Okay. My second one is seconding what Joe talked about. PPAC is now very much involved in looking at the problems that we have on the roads and with the monuments and the landscaping and a lot of the things that are going to be conveyed from WCI to the CDD. At this point, as Joe pointed out, we've got a lot of problems out there. And we believe they need to be corrected before these assets are conveyed to the CDD. Otherwise, they're going to cost us a lot of money. We had, several months ago, had given Tony a few things that needed to be done. We have subsequently sent a report to Chris on other issues, mainly landscaping issues. But I would make the same plea that Joe made, is that you give us time. We now have, PPAC is now involved in this. We have a member of PPAC who is putting together all of the various areas that are supposed to be conveyed and putting together reports of all of the problems that we see in those areas. And as Joe indicated, they're with the roads, they're with curbs. We also have them with monuments and with landscaping, and frankly, there are a lot of them. And what we'd like to be able to do is have the time, as Joe pled, to look at them, move through Chris with a report that he can bring to the board of the things that need to be done before the CDD accepts the transfer or the conveyance of these things from
Phil, one of
WCI.
the things that we do, the utilities and the storm sewer and all that is pretty simple because we have a set of plans.
Right.
And we can review the plans for compliance.
Right.
The problem is unless you all have or somebody has, who has the original design plans for the landscaping? Because I'm sure we're not doing anything with that here. So somebody's got to have sets of plans so that our engineering, because it's beyond, as I understand it, beyond the scope of our engineer to be doing it, but not saying that we shouldn't be. We need something to be able to look at, to go back and say it either was or wasn't done right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it could also have been done right, but not maintained.
Well, that's right, and that's the major problem, Ed.
So, but we
have-
need those
we've got a
documents
problem.
badly.
You go out there are dead plants. There are places that look just absolutely awful. I frankly don't know where those plans are. If we need to get them, Tony, maybe you can.
I
One
think-
suggestion might be to see if the city of Fort Myers has them as part of any development order or permit. Might be one if we can inquire there.
Okay.
But I would think we just go back to the developer and just ask them to furnish those documents because that they retain somebody to do the work. Whether it's landscaping or it's signage, but as I understand it, the things that are involved are streetlights.
There's really basically just at one place.
Okay.
Streetlight.
And then that becomes an issue of who owns the lights, the CDD and or FPL, because they have, both ways they go.
Well, yeah.
And then the second one is the signage and the design of the signage. And then the third one would be the landscaping.
Well, the
If we get access
landscaping-
to those plans, we can certainly check it.
Yeah. Now, and then, of course, in addition to that are the roads and the curbs, which I think would take some additional review by Tetra Tech.
But we have plans on roads and curbs.
Yes, right. And some of them are a wreck, very frankly, at this point.
A wreck in that they weren't built right or they have failed.
I think in some places they weren't built right, in other cases they failed.
So both.
In my circulation through.
You really ought to come to the mic.
The original phase one.
Joe, can you come up to the mic? This is strictly an observation, not an engineering expertise point, but am I walking through all of Carina? Phase one, the sidewalks and the curbing are in much better shape and they're older than anything that's in the new section of phase two. In fact, I have a chunk of concrete I meant to bring in here to give you that I brought out of the curb. So I'm sure, it looks to me, having been schooled somewhat in concrete, that there could be a difference in the Mix.
type of concrete or the strength of the concrete. So I would suspect that that's a place to look, and I would really give you that sample of concrete I have to have it evaluated for what it really is. If just to get everybody up to speed, Carina is the multifamily, correct?
No.
Oh, it's a single family?
Single-family
It's the
units.
largest single family.
It's, okay, and when you come in from the golf course and you're heading east, Carina is on Left or the
If
right?
you came down
The
Pelican
right,
Preserve
the right.
Boulevard,
It's on the right.
It's on the right.
you
So
took
at
the left
any
on
rate,
Cypress.
You're working on a list that you're gonna provide to Chris on all of these issues
But we need
that
those
you're
plans are
talking
the
about.
issue though, Margaret.
Yeah.
We've got to have those
So,
plans.
so we are, yes, Margaret, we are working on putting together a compilation of all the communities. We're trying to get volunteers from the communities. We've already done quite a bit of work, and we've already provided, as I said, Chris with a kind of preliminary one, but it only covers a portion of the community. So we want to put the whole thing together, and we need some time to do it.
And the maintenance of all these here to this point have been maintained by the developer.
That's correct. They have had responsibility for that. So we've only had one conveyance, and that has been Solera Drive. That's already been conveyed. That's a done deal. But there's all these other areas that need to be looked at. So that's my plea.
When he
Thank you.
Okay.
Uh,
I think he's got a
Well-
question again, Margaret.
Next, David.
Perform an acid test.
Dave Caldwell with WCI Communities, Lenore. Asked to speak on a non-agenda item. But just to follow up with Mr. Menzies and the PPAC, we've always understood that PPAC was going to comment and help on the reviews and the final acceptance of the roads. All we asked was that it be coordinated through the district staff and its engineers so that we had a list, not multiple lists, and it wasn't our task to get PPAC coordinated with your staff. So I'm at a loss of words of why they think they still need months when we've already been working many, many months with staff and your engineer on turnover. And I just think that's somewhat unfair, but I understand from the residents' perspective, they want things fixed, that they see that they may be out there. So all I can do is urge you all to work quickly to get this resolved. That wasn't the item I wanted to speak with, but Mr. Phil brought it up, so I had to chime in. The item I wanted to speak to was also spoken about, and that was the signage the developer has for the community of Pelican Preserve. It was at the end of June, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, brought to our attention through an email that the signage within Pelican Preserve Boulevard near the entry of the community was to come down because it was on Gateway Services District roads rights of way. Understand? Because that's where it is. It's been there for decades in various forms. And that was something that, as a developer of master plan communities, we provide for in our declarations in all their communities, whether they have a district or not. And usually the developer has very broad rights for signage and marketing for the various purposes of trying to sell out the community. We do restrict the resident side of the component of signage because we do want to control the amount of signs the residents have, either for sale or yard sale or whatever purpose they might think a sign is important to. So I know that they think that we have to be treated it the same way, but the declaration speaks for itself that the developer needs the signage for marketing purposes, and otherwise we need to control the community as a master plan community for the signage that goes there. But at the end of June, we got a letter, please remove your signage. I thought at the time that, well, that's not right because we have the right under the declaration. Further, that typically when we record the declaration, we subject 100% of the property to that. Without reviewing the documents, I erred and found out that the district roads are not subject to the declaration right now. So you were right to ask the question, why are the signs there? It's on our land. They shouldn't be. Please remove. And that's why you've heard at maybe the staff levels that WCI would like to approach the board for consideration of a license agreement to allow the signage that is out there on district rights-of-way to remain there. We need it for marketing purposes. It's important to the success of the company. Obviously, the signs, if you didn't have the signage, you're relying on either the guard to give correct information to get to the sales office. It's not directly at the entry. It's a half a mile or so away, and you have to make a couple of turns to get there. And I know my counsel, Charles Mann, is also asked to speak as to any of the issues on the license agreement that he's prepared for Tony's review and staff's and board's consideration. But if you had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but that was the point of my standing up here.
Give him a minute.
I think, David, Tony just received it, and as I understand it, we're putting it on the agenda for the next meeting for discussion.
Okay.
That was a request that be placed on the next board meeting's agenda, 2/24.
At 2:24 today, I received an email from Charles Mann's law firm with a draft license agreement. I've not had a chance to read it. I did not want to read it on the interstate. With the request that be placed on the next board meeting's agenda for consideration.
Madam Chairman, I'm going to object to that. We've discussed this at some length. The authority has made his determination. PPAC has made theirs. And again, I am ready for a motion to remove those signs when you are ready to accept it.
Yeah, and Madam Chairman and Mr. Guy, what I would suggest, since it's not an agenda item, and it's come up today, that we also open the floor for others besides Mr. Mann and Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Measy to address this issue if the board wants to take any action on it.
We will, of course, will do that.
Thank you.
And I think that Mrs. Flaherty did have a question she wanted to ask Mr. Caldwell.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Yes, Mr. Caldwell, it's been brought to our attention that the part of Griffin Drive you still own, and we were wondering if there's a desire to put a fence there, if you would pay for part of it or all of it, because it's still part of your property, and it is a little bit of a hazard, what's up there now. You can look into it and get back to us, that would be.
I'm looking at Chris. Is this a request that came to me before and I haven't responded, or is this brand new?
It's
New, and they were looking at it right across the street here,
Oh.
across Griffin on the power line, and easement right away.
Could I ask that, if there's a specific request, I don't want to say, what we'll do because I don't know what it is.
That's why I asked if you would
So-
look into it.
Oh, yeah,
If-
send whatever it is so we can look into it and determine what can be done, if anything.
Okay, thank you.
Next, Mr. Charles Mann, from RWC.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Charles Mann with Pavis Law Firm representing Lennar WCI. And I just, as Mr. Pierce indicated, at 2:25-ish, I sent,
24.
24. Thought that would be ample time, but all joking aside, we sent a proposed license agreement along with the request that this go on next agenda, which maybe would be the best time to discuss pros and cons, particularly if there's other issues like Supervisor Flaherty raised. We would ask that those maybe be flushed out and to be put on that agenda before anything's done. But I wanted to also point out a couple things. As Mr. Caldwell mentioned, I think the notion that the developer had been operating under was that this road was submitted to the declaration, and that is something that Lee County always requires when you record a plat. Everything in the platted area is supposed to be submitted to these covenants. So how that slipped through the cracks, and it's been 15 years, I think, since that declaration was recorded. I'm not really sure. But I did confirm, the district had raised the issue, and as Mr. Caldwell said, we did confirm that road was not submitted to the covenants. Now, I'm sure if I spent some more time thinking about it, we could come up with some creative legal arguments given the signs, WCI's been putting signs up there, but our thought was that's a waste of time and resources, so we requested a license agreement. The other thing that's important, I think it's important to point out is, and we're talking about signs on Pelican Preserve, there's some other marketing signs when tree line and other places that obviously aren't on district property and aren't related, but Pelican Preserve, when you come in, we did go ahead and take a look at the title on the abutting properties where all these signs are, and with the exception of the median coming into Pelican Preserve, WCI owns or controls all of the abutting properties. So the reality is, while it's certainly not desirable, these signs could all be moved 4 or 5 feet back and still be there. Maybe they'd have to be enlarged to have their impact and so on and so forth. I'm not sure. I looked at the title. I didn't drive out there. I was hoping to do it, but didn't have the time here before we came in here. But, and I hear somebody, for example, the conservation areas, the tracts known as conservation areas are platted, as Tony could confirm if he looks at it, are platted as golf course tracts. And when WCI granted their conservation easements, those easements were specifically drawn to have a 10-foot gap between the right-of-way line, which the district owns, and the actual easement. So there's a 10-foot gap that's unencumbered by any conservation easement or restrictions for the sign. So we feel confident we could do that, except that, again, someone's going to have to go out there and survey these lines because there's no line of demarcation out there where the right-of-way ends. It's not where the curb and the pavement is and where it begins. So more money, more costs, which, you know, you all are sitting here as representatives of Gateway as a whole. I understand some residents, and it was expressed that that's the sentiment of the entire community, that they don't like these signs. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I find it a little hard to believe that that's accurate. But either way, we've certainly had several people here representing residents expressing that. But the district has a different consideration, and I would ask whether it seems like it may make sense for the district to keep signage, particularly as I've been coming here the last several months, and apparently I'm going to be here every other Thursday. We're trying to work together and do a lot of things, roads, drainage, everything else. So prior to coming, when I prepared this license agreement, this seemed like a no-brainer to me, to be honest with you. Now, we've obviously heard some concerns. We still think, you know, it makes sense at least to put it on the agenda for 2 weeks from now and have a discussion, but we think it makes sense to enter some sort of arrangement like a license and keep the signs and not have us moving them, particularly because in the license agreement that I sent to Mr. Pierce, we put in insurance provisions, indemnification, hold harmless, so if something happened, the district would not be responsible, WCI Lennar would. Of course, if we move those signs back and you have things happening on district property related to the signs, distraction, whatever, guess what? Now we've got to be fighting about who's actually responsible, or the person that's injured is going to be fighting. So I would actually submit to you that given that we can still keep all the signs, essentially, it's a better scenario for the district as a whole to have this arrangement where you've clarified district concerns. Again, district concerns, which I don't believe are necessarily the same aesthetic concerns that the residents have. I understand you're probably all sensitive to your members and their various concerns, but for the district as a whole, I believe the arrangement that we're proposing, subject to Tony's review and comment, and I'm quite confident we will get his, counsel on various revisions or things that may need to be addressed in my document from the district's behalf. But I just want to make sure we understood that the signs essentially are going to stay in their general location, but we think that's a huge waste of time, resources, to not enter into a cooperative arrangement here, to keep the signs where they're at, and also provide protections to the district. I took a stab at putting those in there, but Tony, again, will bring those up. So I think it's a better scenario personally. If you were going to be able to get rid of the signs and you wanted to listen to the residents and not have any signs there, I still think it would be a bad idea, but I could see where you're coming from. But here, it's just going to be a waste of time and effort, in my view at least. And we'd certainly ask, you bring this up at the next meeting, let Mr. Pierce review the agreement, look into what I'm saying here to verify, because we don't have any problem with that. And I'm happy to hear any other questions or comments if you have.
How many signs are we talking about?
12.
12? That's what I was curious of. Mr. Guy,
By the way, I think there's 2 in the median? 2 in the median are the only ones that the median's in the middle of district property. Obviously, I can't move that to the left or right. Those would have to go. But all the other ones, including at the entranceway, are adjacent to property.
Margaret, I'd like to take and delay this for 2 weeks. I personally have not driven that to see them, and I really am not interested in the precedent that we're going to create.
Would you like to see them?
No, I'll go out there and look at them.
You can look at them right now.
Yeah, I can go out there and look at them. I know the way. And set the precedent of having stuff that's not on the agenda coming before for a vote where it's not had a chance for discussion. So my motion is to defer this until we've had a chance to review the agreement that they have proposed and to actually physically go out and look at it for myself.
And we would welcome the opportunity over the
You're
next
gonna
2 weeks
accept a
to
motion
hear
from him,
any
if you would,
comments,
from me?
supervisors, Mr. Pierce, staff, and see if, if there's
We'll
anything
see
we're
if we get
missing
a
or anything
second,
like that.
and we'll let you can motion.
Sure, I would ask that the residents provide their comments to the supervisors and accordingly,
Yeah, we have it
Fine
on the
with us. I
agenda
mean,
for discussion.
In all fairness, I've been doing this a long time. There's going to be, no matter what sign or marketing program Lennar picks, there's going to be a resident who doesn't like that sign, or more than one, no matter what. So I'm sure we'll hear some stuff about that. But in terms of the considerations for the district in this approach, we'd love to hear the comments as relayed from residents or from the supervisors.
Mr. Tinkle made a motion. Do I have a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Mr. Guy, you had wanted to make a motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I guess, again, Madam Chairman, if you're going to try to take some action, ask if anybody else in the audience wishes to speak.
How
on
about
this
after I
topic.
make the motion, so they'll know what
That'd
I'm
be fine.
talking about?
That's a good idea. Okay. I'm not trying to cut you off, Mr. Guy. I just want to make sure we don't forget that.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
He had wanted to make it earlier, and I asked him to wait, so.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, I wish to confirm that the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee met last Thursday and is unanimous in wanting all of the signs on Pelican Preserve Boulevard removed. All 12 of them were put up without prior notice. They've been up for about a month, and every resident of Pelican Preserve that I've talked to wants them down. Pelican Preserve is not a new community. As Mr. Mann so correctly indicated, it is 15 years old. I know that for a fact because I've lived there for over 15 years. Therefore, I move that the district manager be directed to remove all of those signs on Pelican Preserve Boulevard at once.
And so that's your motion.
That is my motion.
Do I have a second? No second. You want me to second for discussion so that anyone in the audience can have a chance to speak? I'll do that.
There's no sense in having anybody speak if I can't get a second on a motion. But that leaves us in an interesting dilemma. We can't vote on it tonight, and the board doesn't want to entertain Mr. Tinkle's motion to do it in 2 weeks.
I would like to have this on the agenda in 2 weeks. And my concern is that having the signs removed, it sounds like they're not planning on removing them. They're just gonna move them and
Relocate them.
possibly make them bigger. And I don't think your community is gonna like that either. So that really, when I heard that really concerned me.
That seems to be a threat with no balance to it. And frankly, sir, I object to that, to trying to use that kind of threat on this body and on Pelican Preserve as a whole.
And I actually walked up here to try and say before he said that was not intended to be implied as a threat in any way whatsoever. What we want to be important to note, though, is to market the community, they're going to have the signs. So I wanted to make it clear, not in a threatening manner, that we did own and control that property and can move it there. We don't want to move it there. I mean, and I would also wanted to step up here real quick and would like to have the 2 weeks to work through any issues, because if the district goes out removing signs, even if they're under the correct belief that there's no defense to us having the signs there, and they may be, I haven't gone through that effort to look at it. Clearly, the obvious issues we've resolved that are in favor of the district in terms of ownership and the covenants and everything. But as Tony may counsel you, there is a danger from a liability standpoint, and even when somebody's trespassing, taking that property, and then damage happens to that property before we've had a chance to move it and so on and so forth. So at a minimum, this board may vote, I don't know, I can't predict what will happen in 2 weeks, but I think a cooperative effort to try and work something out, particularly even if it's removal of signs, makes sense, because I think, again, not threatening the district in any way, but I think it's a dangerous thing to go, and it's been my experience, even when somebody's trespassing, to just move stuff that has value is, not a great idea. And we're here with dialogue. We didn't have anything on the agenda. We're here to talk about it. I'm emailing with your council all the time. We're reachable.
Well,
I mean,
it'll be on the agenda in 2 weeks.
That would be great.
What I would suggest as part of what if you can provide to me and to the staff, a copy of all the permits that you've obtained for all those signs, as well as aerial photographs depicting the locations of all the signs, and photographs of each and every one of those signs, so the board, when they make the determination as to whether or not to enter into a license agreement, can have all that information. And
Yes, I didn't do that. Thank you for reminding me, Mr. Guy. Mr. Guy reminded me I did not call the roll for the people that are doing the
okay.
minutes. So I will do that now. Thank you for reminding me. I did neglect.
And what I would suggest, just so that we don't hear anything from Mr. Mann or WCI that don't take any more of our signs down that we plop in the road, I would suggest that we send a strong message to Mr. Mann, Mr. Caldwell, now the board, not to put any more signs up until this is resolved.
And this is Mr. Mann duly acknowledged Mr. Pierce's suggestion too.
Thank you.
And I assume
And while I
will
disagree
be
with.
strictly followed.
Yeah, and I disagree with Charles. I mean, you know, typically you have code enforcement go out there and remove, especially in rights-of-way, because of the very nature of rights-of-way and the need to make sure that we don't have any issues on accidents or anything else. I think it's a different animal, typical trespass. Self-help may be a remedy, but if we're waiting for 2 weeks, I think they need to give us all the information they can.
So we're going to go status quo for 2 weeks. Okay.
Okay, and again, I will, at this point, I will call the roll. Our attorney is here, Mr. Piers, Supervisor Tinkle, Supervisor Feinberg, Supervisor Guy, Supervisor Flaherty, Chris Shoemaker, the district manager, and Stephen Bloom, our CPA. That's done. All right. Any more people that wanted to speak?
Our last comment for the day is from Mr. Bob Gepper.
Bob Jeppert, Pelican Preserve, and I just wanted to apprise the board of the status from the pond's perspective only of conveyance. We've had a number of discussions in here about timeliness and things like that for the district to take over the ponds, responsibility for maintenance of the ponds. To that end, and we totally support that incidentally, to that end, we had a comprehensive meeting in district offices this week in which Tetra Tech was here and Chris was here and Ponds was represented. We had all of the maps of the new Track L, Matarita 2A, 3, 4, Casella, Corina, everything. And I have now assurances that every pipe has been video inspected. We have developed previously for this meeting a spreadsheet, which is exactly what we did on the old ponds. And what Tetra Tech is going to do for us is for every pipe section, be it from a street or pond to pond or whatever, they're going to list on our spreadsheet the videotape that pertains to that pond or that conveyance. The second component is once we have all that done, then we have to have the legible copies of all reports from whoever WCI Lennar has engaged to videotape, and if they had any comments, like a broken pipe or pipe doesn't go all the way through or sludge or whatever that issue is. And we want to lay that next to the appropriate pipe section. And then the final component is that we have assurances that those have been remedied. It seems like a very simple thing, but we have had we've been working at this for a couple of months, and unfortunately, one of the companies that inspected pipe for WCI Lennar has refused to turn over to Ponds legible copies of what they found. So we're trying to address that. They said they would provide them to the district, and they would provide them to Tetra Tech, but they won't give them to us. And I don't care who it comes to, as long as I got it. But the district has not received that yet, and nor has Tetra Tech. So that's one of the things that's slowing the process down. But that's a minor one.
Bob?
Yes.
You have certified as-bills for both the ponds and the structures?
Yes.
You have certified as-bills?
Well, I don't know, it's certified. I got the as-bills. We've walked it. Again, we're non-technical.
I want an as-bills with an engineer's stamp on them.
Well, and I'll leave that up to Tetra Tech, but I have everything that I
Tyler?
need.
Yes.
Who stamped them? Original engineer?
Hello, Tyler Wainwright with Tetra Tech. There's two engineers out there. There's RWA and Waldrop, and the respective engineers stamped them.
The design engineer stamped them?
Correct.
Great, okay.
Yeah, the only problem, Ed, that we've had with the as-bills, RWA done a great job. The other outfit, Waldrop, have duplicate numbers on there. They'll have pond conveyance 5101 in more than one location. Clearly, there can only be one that's labeled 5101. So those anomalies were reported to Tetra Tech. They're going to go back to Waldrop, and we will get corrected copies. Because we sit down and check every single conveyance, and that's where we picked up these discrepancies, but that's minor. For the board, I just want to let you know we are moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
The next thing, we are having some difficulties with our current pond maintenance provider. And to that end, we went out and looked at the new ponds we might be accepting shortly, and some things that Tetra Tech doesn't even know about yet, but we have some sandbars in the new ponds. So we requested them to do whatever they have to do aerially wise and take pictures so that if we get littorals growing in the middle of the pond, so to speak, then that indicates there's a problem.
Do you have bathymetrics?
We don't have
As-built
bathymetrics on the new ones. We have bathymetrics on all existing.
So I guess the question I've got is, we've got sandbars in the flowway also.
Yes.
You're saying there's sandbars in the ponds themselves?
Well, one that I'm personally knowledgeable of, yes.
But we've got design standards for those ponds and depths and all that good
And
stuff.
I was unaware of that. This is something new. Heretofore, when we walk the bank, we look for washouts, we look for erosion, we look for 4-to-1, those kind. This was a new item, and it's just come up. And because it's a new item, I hate to, well, I'm not gonna be on the Lennar side, but, when they ask for a punch list, you give it to them, they think you do it, you come back and say, oh, we got 5 more. I really don't like doing that. I wanna give them a comprehensive one, but this is relatively new, so we have to go wherever it goes. One more new item that just came up today, as a matter of fact. Apparently, in some of the ponds we're transferring over, WCI&R put in the aeration systems, and we're very grateful for that. But we've now learned that some of those ponds where it's not working. So that's just one more item to get back to. I'm sure it's minor.
You mean the equipment's not working?
The equipment's not working. Either the diffuser's bad, the diffuser's clogged, the compressor's going bad, I'm not sure what. But we'd like to have all of that equipment functioning at time of transfer.
Were those part of the original design, or about changing?
From them, yes.
Okay.
Well, as we're taking over the ponds, WCI's put that in because we changed permit criteria.
Okay.
And the very last new thing, and I hate to do this, apparently within the last 3 weeks, and I was away most of these 3 weeks, we've been going under a considerable golf course renovation. They're fixing the greens, they're doing all kinds of stuff. And that's typically done each year. The new thing that has happened to us this year is, I guess they've got mountains of sand. And I confirm with the golf course superintendent that they're the ones that are doing this. But as they're taking the sand out of the greens and things, or wherever they're getting it from, they've been lining it across the banks of the pond.
Ooh.
And I've got some photos of where some had been placed, and it's a pond back in Viadana, and it's all washing into the pond. So again, this is a new item to them, they don't know about it, and I don't like to drop things on them in this meeting, but it is one of the things that I'm going to have to apprise Tetra Tech of, so they can add that to the punch list, so when we get the punch list, it is comprehensive.
Mr. Geppert, your time is up.
Okay, now I got a totally new item, and I'll be quick.
Gateway can use all that excess material that you got over there.
Okay.
We're building a berm separating us and you.
At our PPAC meeting a week ago, yeah, I heard that. At our PPAC meeting a week ago, the PPAC members learned for the first time that some of the conservation areas in our community had been transferred to the Pelican Preserve HOA. Not all of them. One of them's in Old Pelican and one is in New. Since we used to have, PPAC used to have responsibility for conservation areas, and then WCI yanked that back because of an issue we had in the community. It seems very inappropriate to me, and I've sent a letter to Tony outlining this, that if WCI is going to convey them over to someone for maintenance, it ought to be the board. It shouldn't be the HOA. And the only reason I feel this way is because they have 2 seats on the HOA versus residents having 1. So the residents have no opportunity to have these things inspected or done anything else.
Bob, I've looked at permits till I'm blue in the face in this community, and I haven't seen one permit yet on South Florida Water Management District on the second page of the conditions that mentions anybody other than ponds and wetlands to the Gateway CDD, period.
Yeah.
Not any exceptions, no
Okay.
conditions, no.
Well, and that's probably,
So I don't understand how they
sent it
can
to
do
Tony
that.
today, and hopefully.
That came earlier than 224.
But I didn't have the documentation, that's why I was so late. I knew it, but I didn't have it in writing, now I got it in writing. But I want to say to the board, from our position as residents and PPAC, we wanted to come to you guys. We want an opportunity to inspect these wetlands and conservation areas, to make sure they're right when we take them. Thank you very much.
Have these wetlands gone through the 5-year period?
Sorry, I went over.
They have gone through the
I
5-year
think
period,
it's
and
Well,
they've been
the newer
maintained.
Could possibly.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
The new Cypress Grove could not
I'm
possibly.
thinking of the.
Old Pelican, yeah.
What was the methodology of the transfer, quitclaim deed?
Well, that's what I'll find out.
Can you give
Quick
him a
claim
chan-
deed.
Yeah, let him
You
have
don't
a
do that.
chance to look into all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, Bob sent it at 2:15, Charles at 2:24. I think there's a collusion going on.
It is a
I
quick.
was trying to give you more than 2 weeks' notice. This was not for today.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Bob.
so long.
Yeah, Bob,
Madam
by the way,
Chair,
Bob-
we have one more comment.
One
Mr.
more.
Mr. Schofield would like to use up the rest of his 5 minutes.
What?
I just want to address our friend lawyer and WCI Lenoir. Would you like to have a friendly community that supports selling houses or aggravated bad publicity by the residents? Then it's mostly everybody in Pelican Preserve
We don't want
telling
this.
everyone how horrible you are for putting
don't
those
need
signs
this.
up and leaving them up for whatever reason. But you can
Mr.
trust me,
Schofield?
Schofield?
Mr.
nobody
Schofield.
is happy about that.
Yeah, we can't have a
Yeah.
personal attack or that kind of
Well,
thing.
I'm just addressing WCI Lenoir, not the persons.
Well,
They need to understand what we think.
okay, that's all we have for public comment.
Okay.
On the
let's-
agenda item, and if I can remind the folks in the audience, when you have 5 minutes to make a comment, it's not by agenda item or topic. If it's not on the agenda, or even if it is, it's a time limit per person, so,
I'll learn to speak faster.
thank you.
That includes the
58.
lawyers too, right?
Well,
They get 2.5, I think.
it doesn't include board members.
It should, no. District engineer, let's move on, please.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Tyler Wainwright. I'm with Tetra Tech. I'll be your district engineer for this afternoon. I really don't have anything to discuss other than there's an agenda item that we'll talk about later that I'm sure we'll have some conversation on. But if you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Madam Chairman.
Can I look at my notes?
Uh,
Yeah, I've got
Tyler, do you have anything to report to us regarding the Girl Scout building?
Yes, sir. So there was two main components of the Girl Scout building PD amendment. One part of it was we had to update a couple of maps for the county, which is done. The second part is we've got to get the sign off of the adjacent church and the HOA and Fun Park, which is Gateway. So where we're at is we're waiting for the sign off from the adjacent property owners.
Okay.
How
When
long-
do- When do you, oh, sorry.
No.
Go right ahead, I'm sorry.
How long are you gonna wait? And are you doing an overt item to try and get these sign-offs, or are you just waiting for them to come back to you, or what are you doing?
No, sir. Me and Mike talked about it yesterday, and we were discussing who was going to approach them and how and what we were going to tell them. So
You haven't done anything yet, is that right?
I have not asked them personally, no, sir.
Don't you think it's about time?
Well, sir, the task agreement that we signed off with Gateway said the Gateway was going to perform that action. So, like I said, we've been working with Mike to see who's going to do that, and we will be proceeding accordingly.
Shouldn't we be mailing them something?
We're going to
Official?
attend the HOA meeting. It's really the church and Eagle Point and the other subdivision and Ed Seychelles will be going to their HOA to speak with them about it
And when do we anticipate that all happening?
next week.
Next week,
Yeah.
okay.
It's in the
That
works.
gives us an idea. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may tag onto that too, send an email to Robert Clement, ask John Ferdima, the right person at the county for the processing the county release of that deed restriction. And it's Robert Clement in the land section. I had a conversation with Robert, followed up with an email. He's on vacation for a few days, but he was gonna start the ball rolling on that.
Go ahead.
with the county.
Couple of things. You're going to defer Florida Line till later?
Yeah, just thought
Okay.
we'd wait till the agenda.
Okay, no problem. Lee County Utilities, just want to get for clarification, so I narrow down the scope of my target. As I understand it, you all, Tetra Tech, don't have anything in the way of knowledge of how rates and charges were assessed against Gateway Services District by Lee County Utilities? You're not in that loop, that chain?
That's a pretty broad question. So are you talking about the,
I'll make it real specific. How did we go from $4.84 a thousand gallons for sewer to $3.01, and we went from $2.90 on water the 384.
So-
It's an absolute flip-flop of a magnitude I've never seen in 40 years.
So me personally,
So I'm just asking, where do I go
I think.
for referencing of how we got to where we're at? Because I'm scared to death that another $2006 million infamous invoice out of nowhere is coming.
I
I'm
think
just trying
the
to find
answer
out, who
to
do
your
I go to?
I think you need to talk to your rate consultant. I
Okay.
think it's the right answer.
Okay, thank
And
you.
and I will look for any correspondence I may have on that also, because in the past, typically, there would be notifications sent to the district staff or management
So-
on that, but I can see if I have anything in that
Okay,
loop.
next item, I can talk to Stephen. Next one is the SRF loan. Where are we at on being able to get out from underneath this interim line of credit? Are we now in a position to close on the loan, and are we ready to go?
You have two separate loans with SRF. You have one loan for the design portion, which there's no reason why you can't reimburse for that. And I think the Gateway's in the process of getting reimbursed for that. That was for round numbers, $100 and some thousand.
Yeah, yeah,
The second loan was the construction loan.
for 4.4.
Yep. The holdup on that is the validation hearing, which is scheduled for
August
August
the
8th.
8th.
Yes.
So that is the holdup on the second loan for construction.
Do we have the form of the agreement, or can you get them to send that to us?
We have a draft form of agreement from the DEP.
Can you-
I know it's not been executed yet, but.
Can you send it?
Yes, sir.
Now,
Please, someone send it to me, please, thank you.
also on that, Tyler, is that the estimated cost of the construction was 4.4 million. We had an original SRF loan approved tentatively at 6 million. Will
Right.
this give us access to the other 1.56 million to go to 6?
Will this loan, no. This
So
will
we're
not.
only getting approved to the 4.4.
That's correct.
Where are we in the line of filing paperwork with DEP or whoever to go up to, I forget what it was, 7, 8 million, to do the next 13 ponds?
To do the next phase of ponds, you're gonna need to prepare a facilities report to do those ponds.
No. We've already got the facilities plan on those 5.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're talking about
The next
okay,
8 of the
not-
first
not phase
13.
2, the next 8.
Yes.
So you have an allowance in your facilities plan of $6 million. You are currently approved by the DEP for whatever the number is, 4.3, 4.4, whatever. In order to get authorization to expend that balance, the 1.6, that would go theoretically.
Well, it's
to the
not only go to
November
1.6, it's gonna be substantially more than 1.6. Probably
Well-
gonna be around at 7 or 8 million.
The board's currently, I think, authorized up to 6, so to go
Yes.
over that, yes. Your next available opportunity is going to be the November hearing. The November DEP hearing.
Okay, what do we have to do, what do you need us to do for you to be able to do that and meet that deadline? Need a motion?
No, sir. You've already authorized us to prepare plans and specs, which we are doing. We don't need any motion.
So
from
it's
the
just
board.
gonna be a paperwork deal that you do to get us in line to have the money available to do the next 8 on that November deadline?
Yes, sir. Now,
Okay.
I can't tell you what that amount is going to be, but if it does exceed that 6 million, this board would need to authorize that.
Well, that's what I was asking, because we know it's gonna go over 6 million
Time out.
Well,
for those next 8 ponds.
Time out.
Yes.
We seem to be getting the cart in front of the horse again. We have authority up to 6 million, do we not?
this board is authorized to expend up to
Correct.
$6 million. Yes, sir.
And 4.4 of that's been obligated, so you can go to 1.6 that we still have to work with, so why aren't we letting contracts for the rates that are already remaining of the original 13 to spend that money before we start worrying about going up to 7 or 8?
But we've already approved the 8. We've already approved the other 8 and authorized the design. It would be ridiculous not to be able to meet the timeline and give the contractors the opportunity to do this work timely as opposed to what we did the last time.
It might
So
be
this
ridiculous,
would
but
put us
it's
in a
also
position-
ridiculous not to get moving on lakes that we can finance with the balance of the 6, i.e.
Well,
1.6.
I agree, but we are going to need, we can't put out those 8 projects for bid if we only have 1.6 million. That's the problem.
We
know
can,
it's going
certainly we can. We can put out, there are 3 or 4 lakes that we can bid that won't exceed the 1.4.
It's not the best way to do it, Bill. The best way to do it is to put these all out at the same time, get the economy of size, and most importantly, have them set to go that they can do the work at the right season instead of starting like we did last year in March.
You're
So
just
it
holding
is the
thing
right
up.
way to do it. I'm
You're
sorry?
just- What you're doing is just holding it up.
No, I'm authorizing them to be in a position to increase the 6 million to the number that will finance all of them in November. That's all.
Well, I guess.
And they need a motion
And
to
it's-
do that.
And it's just approving that we could borrow the money if we need to.
Correct.
It's not saying we're gonna
Correct, we still
spend
gotta
it,
take bids.
But we still have to have the ability
Yep.
to borrow it to try and get the work done.
Yep.
Well, I think what I might say is, you know, I guess you can always bid it. I mean,
It's
bid it
not
out
a-
and see what the number is.
It's not a real wise deal to be leading contractors on that they're doing this for a game. If I'm gonna take and put out a request for proposal, notwithstanding any cost overruns, I wanna be honest with the contractors and tell them if I've got 8 ponds and I know it's gonna be $4 million and I only got 1.6 in my pocket, I don't like that. That's
You've
not
got-
the way to do business.
Wait a minute. We've got 1.6 that is still remaining from the original 6, do we not?
That's correct, Bill. That's not the issue. The issue is giving them the authority.
Giving
to-
who?
Tetra Tech, the authority to go and ask for the paperwork, to create the paperwork, to submit in November, to go from 1.6 or 6 million, which is the current ceiling, up to 7, 8, whatever the projected estimate is of the remaining 8 ponds. That's all we're doing.
Do we
That's all
know
we're
what
doing.
the estimate is for the remaining 8 ponds? Do we have?
No, ma'am, I don't have a hard number for you, and the reason that is because we met with Gateway, and the decision was to revise it to make it cheaper. So we revised almost all of them now to a lesser, I don't want to say cheaper, more economical product. So I don't have a good answer for you right now of what that new estimate is going to be.
Okay.
Certainly way before November.
And
we
what
would
is
do
the
that.
more
Margaret.
economical product that we have decided on?
More or less doing the same thing without the TRM.
Margaret, if we have about 18,000 lineal feet in those 8 ponds, and we were able to get it down to 150 a lineal foot, there's 2.7 million. So 3 million, you're in the ballpark.
But-
That doesn't include,
Again, I will ask my
design
question.
costs.
What is the more economical plan for the lake banks?
I think there's a couple of things that we think we're gonna change. Bringing in fill below the water line, I think we're going to do it mostly with stone instead of fill. I don't think we're going to move forward with using TRM in the future in some of these lakes banks, because they're really not that steep. A lot of them really, I mean, they should be repaired, but they're not to the extent of a lot of these earlier ones are. So that's a lot of cost that's going to be eliminated from that project. I think
But
we're
these
looking at.
first 13 were the worst of the worst.
Correct?
Yep.
So we put in this product
Yep.
for the ones that were the worst, the first 5. And now are you telling me the next 8 aren't as bad as the first 5? So they're not going to get the product that could hold up or last? That,
we're of the opinion the slopes are not as bad, Margaret, as they were on those first 5.
There's some spots that are.
Some spots are.
And there's some spots that we're pretty sure we're probably gonna leave it. But there's some that really, some of these really long lake banks that are 3,000 foot long, they've probably got a section that's, let's just make up numbers, say 1,000 foot, that's really bad, that needs to be repaired, and we're probably gonna use something more extensive in that area. But then there's 2,000 feet that either has existing riprap, the one over across the street on Griffin I'm thinking about right now.
Pinewood Lakes.
Pinewood Lakes, it has existing riprap, that it doesn't make sense to tear that riprap out and go put TRM in.
Yeah.
So we're trying to
I
look
can
at it
see
a different
that.
way.
What I want to hear, what I'm hearing is, we've got our ponds done in Gateway Greens, and now everybody else is going to get some lesser quality of material, and that is not going to cut it with me.
That's what this board asked your staff and Tetra Tech to do.
That's
I
not
don't
gonna-
agree with it, Margaret,
that's
but
not-
that's what this board asked Tetra Tech and staff to do.
We asked them to look at we asked them to look and see if there were any alternatives, but now all of a sudden I'm hearing, now that the lakes and Gateway Greens have been done, the rest of you get something of a lesser quality, and that is not gonna
Margaret,
cut
that
it
is
with
not
me, Ed.
true at all. There were 5 ponds, 3 in Gateway Greens and 2 over here in Bristol Park. So that's not true. That's just throwing gas on a fire. The issue is this board was upset about the price and they wanted it less. What he is saying is that they're trying to do what we asked them to do and find a lesser way of doing it.
We
We're not
asked
saying
for
it's a lesser quality,
alternatives.
a lesser cost. So I think you,
What I want to see is, I want to see what materials are going to be used on what lakes and what you're looking at to reduce the cost. Because I can tell you, there is going to be upset people in here if the quality of their lake bank restoration that they're paying for in other places isn't as good on their lakes. And that's not fair to the community, that they paid for something really expensive in one community, and the rest of us get to decide, rest of us get what's left over. I'm not going there. I'm not doing that.
if you want to go that route, I'm ready to make the motion then to go on ahead and follow the same format and go the whole way, and then 2.7 million will be 5-6 million.
What I would suggest, since this is a very technical, complicated issue, is that this be on the next board agenda with some, really.
It'll be a long meeting.
No, with some,
That's okay.
with some backup and documentation as to what staff is so far as possible alternatives. Because I think it's tough probably for those who aren't engineers like myself to visualize
Right.
what Tyler and Mr. Tinkle are talking about, and or Chris is not familiar with, or Michael. So I think that might be helpful, and for the community as a whole. That's
pretty smart.
Mrs. Flaherty, you had a.
Yes, I do. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, when is different quality, do you have samples, like, has it been done in other lakes? If it has, I would like to know those, where if this work has been done, so that we could visit it and look at it, so we can actually see what we're looking at, because we really didn't see the rock thing beforehand. No one showed us where those were, but I would prefer to see where this other stuff is and what it looks like.
Yes, absolutely. I disagree with you entirely that no one showed you the rock.
Yeah.
There was 4 pilot
Four
ponds.
ponds.
No, I'm sorry, there was 5 actually, because there was one in Pelican, that had the rock on it, that we invited all the board members out to go and take a look at. So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be argumentative with you, but
I
it was
wasn't.
out there.
We
So
did
as
see.
far as,
We saw them.
as far as examples of where the other method is, yes, we can absolutely get some areas that have been completed using that manner of restoration, so everyone can take a look at them.
Well, Pelican Preserve is using that method.
Yes.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah. Pelican Preserve is
and-
doing
and
it.
Madam Chairman, rest of the board, I think what's also
It'd be
important
less.
is, part of what Tetra Tech can provide is, as Tyler has mentioned, is that the level of severity on the following lakes may not be as great as the initial lakes, which had severe issues. And so different techniques may be appropriate based upon
Yeah.
the condition of the pond.
And I understand that, but I also know that some of the next 8 that are coming up, there is severe erosion.
And again, that's something that the board-
There are areas.
There's 3-foot drop-offs.
Yeah, and again, that's what's helpful about having everything in a report to the board, so they all have it in front of
And
them.
we've seen those when we walked them. We saw them.
Yeah, on behalf of Pelican, just throw my 2 cents in, because I don't even know what areas you're talking about. But we employed the more economical approach in Pelican. Everybody doesn't have what we'll call Max the Cadillac. We didn't put the Cadillac on any pond 100%. When a pond has severe areas, we went to Armor Max. When the areas that still needed attention were a little less, we applied a different, more cost-sensitive material. It's just as good. The problem is, it's just as good at appearance. And the problem we're concerned about is the long-term durability.
Exactly.
And we feel very confident, we might be wrong, that having things other than Armor Max in areas were appropriate. They were from a dollar cost point of view.
Okay.
But you won't find a single pond in Pelican that has Armor Max all the way around it. We have applied a different criteria depending on the severity of the drop-off.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Yes,
That's
I
what we're
think
doing.
I
makes
personally
perfect
would
sense.
like to see, because I have to be able to explain to people why some ponds were done one way, but other ponds aren't gonna be done the same way.
Sure, and we can definitely do that. I guess, like others have said, it was, beaten into our heads over and over and over again that the cost of this needs to go down. And there's not, I can't practically sit here and tell you that we're going to continue doing the same exact thing on all the new lakes and make the cost go down.
Right.
That's just simply not possible. So, in order to bring the cost down, there's a couple of things you can do, but probably the biggest one is to use different methods, which is what, we've been asked to do by the board and by staff. So, nothing's built yet. We can certainly present options to the board about ideas. Hey, we can say, look, we think you will save X% if you go to this. And we're not saying the entire pond. Like I said, a lot of these areas, there's spots that are really bad, and there's spots that aren't so bad. So, We're trying to do what we've been instructed to do, is to lower the cost of this project.
Tyler, is there any way we can we get the aerial photos, we've got the 8 ponds, we've all walked the 8 ponds. Can we simply take and at the next meeting have each one of a plan view of each one of those 8 ponds and show, good example, Pinewood Lakes, we've got 9,800 lineal feet. Show how many lineal feet of that we anticipate being of an Armamax type and how much of a Pelican Preserve type.
And we didn't do any.
I don't see a reason why we can't do that.
Or golf course areas, we just totally exclude them. I don't know what you're doing.
We haven't done anything on golf course at this point. But we got another hurdle we got to get by first. That's the issue with Lee County on this issue of hardened surface. We got to get past that issue first. And that's waiting on an answer from Mr. Fertima.
Right, if you want to know, I had a positive conversation with John with regards to that, but I don't yet have an answer from John about the compensatory littorals, but it was a positive conversation.
But there's no reason why we couldn't come back with the 8 plan views and delineate out where we have seen in the field, what you just described, Margaret, because I was up on your lake walking it, and you do indeed have it on 61. Areas that are going to be worse, obviously, than other areas. We went down to Waterford, that lake on Waterford. And for the most part, that was a clean one almost all the way around till you get to the backside, and then you get the escarpment. So to answer you, there is not one shoe fits all. I think it's a combination of the two, but we can come up with a combination. It's real easy to multiply times 230 a foot and multiply times 150 foot and come up with a total. Ballpark. The issue I'm trying to point out is 1.6 million that we have remaining. Regardless of which option you go, is not going to cover the next 8 ponds, period. And we need to be in a position to have those funds so that when we take bids, we can tell the contractors, we have the money to do it.
Can you bring us the information to the next meeting?
Yes, I can bring, I'm not gonna tell you I'm gonna bring you all 8 ponds, because practically I have 2 business days to prepare for the next agenda.
I
So
understand.
we'll bring exhibits to show a couple of example ponds, and what our plan is as far as, hey, this area really isn't that bad, we think you could probably use something less. This area, you're probably gonna end up doing the same thing you did last time, so on and so forth.
What if we did this? How much time do you need if we were to say, if the board were to authorize you to get us ready for additional fundings for the November meeting? What kind of a lead-in do you need for that?
Okay, so timetable-wise, I don't know the exact date of the November hearing, I'm not sure they've posted it yet, but let's say it's the 2nd week in November. To get onto that, you have to submit your documents 45 days in advance to the DEP.
So that's September.
That's correct, the end of September,
So
so.
if we said not to, force you to try and get us information too quickly, well, if we put this on the 2nd meeting in August, would that give you enough time to really give us a good idea of all 8 ponds?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, let's do that. Let's have it ready for the 2nd meeting in August, so
I live
that
with
he's
that.
got enough time.
I live
What
with
I
that.
don't wanna have happen is like what he said, that we get so far behind on all this that we don't do anything, we don't keep it rolling, and March rolls around next year and we're not ready to hit the ground on even one pond.
Or
Sure.
January.
Yeah.
And lessons learned from the last go-round,
Good idea,
that
right.
really, if
Start
the same
early.
thing happens over again, and it's not going to, but, this year, we didn't actually let NTPs, the contractors, till the middle of March. For various reasons that happened because of funding and bridge loans and so on and so forth. Lesson learned from that time, a lot of the problems on punch list items that we're having contractors go back and repair,
Water came up.
like Ms. Linscott talked about earlier, her issue in her yard is a direct result of the contractor trying to do work in the middle of the rainy season. Don't do that next time. If it gets to the point where, we're still constructing in May, stop, wait till the next year. It's gonna save aggravation and headache for a lot of people, so absolutely, I would say we are going to do everything we can to make that November deadline so we can be ready in December instead of March.
Thank you.
Go with that.
We'll see you in 2 weeks, or 4 weeks, excuse me.
Well, will you be here or are you gonna be in Greece?
4 weeks, I'll be back.
Okay.
Get out of the Athens airport.
District Council.
Good point. Well, a couple of things, as I mentioned, I had a meeting with John Fedema on the road conveyance, and John had a couple of the little items, cleanup items, so I'm getting those from the engineer. And then we had a good conversation about the lake bank restoration aspect, and John is formulating his opinion, and hopefully it'll be favorable. But again, when I see it, then I'll have it. I had a nice meeting with staff, and then Mr. Tinkle was there too with Mr. Mann and David Caldwell, WCI, about a couple of things, road conveyances, those roadway segments, but going through my memorandum on the title issues, and we came to possible resolutions or ways to resolve and address those issues, so we'll be working on that in the next month or so. And we also talked about Area 9 and discussed what is going on in that area. We might be bringing something back to the board in the next couple of weeks with regards to Area 9, about getting the boards taking some action that would allow WCI/Lennar to proceed with some litigation to ascertain the easement rights over that one strip of property.
Is that gonna be
Across the
along
interstate.
the
Along the
interstate?
Along the
interstate.
interstate, and that'd be all, that litigation would be at their expense, but they need a document, they believe, from the district in order to effectuate that. And working again with staff on just various and sundry issues, including the Pelican Preserve Boulevard, fact that those roads are not covered by community declaration or the town center declaration. So that was a whole issue about they are not subject to the deed restrictions, so.
Okay.
That's all.
Now, when they were talking, well, no, I'll wait till next meeting when it comes up. I won't bring that can of worms up.
Oh, well,
again.
there's a couple other issues. That's why I asked about show us your permits, because I did a quick look at the city's code, and the Muni code said no such signs in public road rights of way.
Okay.
But maybe there might be something different than Fort Myers has done, or something else in the DRI or special development order, but I just happened to email that to myself while we were talking.
Okay.
That may have been your question.
There was a couple of them running through my brain, and I thought I'd probably just let those flow through. Are you done, Mr.?
Yes, ma'am, for now.
Okay.
Yes.
District manager.
Well, briefly, the Lake Bank is wrapping up. We have a few weeks of, probably 2 weeks it'll take to finish all the washouts and punch list items. But for the most part, besides that, the lakes are complete. They've demobilized out of 86 to 87 up at Cypress Cay and Bristol Park. And it literally, next couple weeks, will be touching up sod, doing any minor repairs and replacements. And the contractor is responsible for sod for 90 days. We do have a 1-year warranty on the workmanship, and we're still holding retainage on the contracts. There has not been any final payouts. And we're putting all the documents together necessary for reimbursement from the FDEP. So I would say within 3 days of the validation hearing being done and that document being signed, we'll be submitting all those documents to get the $4.4 million reimbursement.
Well, and part of that, though, we may need to wait for the 30 days to run so no one files an appeal.
Okay, from August 8th.
Right, assuming for sake of discussion, the court would enter an order that day. Because typically, they like to see certificates of no appeal.
And that is all I have.
Okay.
Couple questions.
Utility, oh,
Couple
I'm sorry,
questions.
go
Yeah, I
ahead.
don't know if these go to Chris or Kenny or Mike, but just throw them at Chris while we're going. Has anybody had any contact with Bentley Electric either on an update on the lights on Griffin Drive? Last I heard was permits and ordering product, and that in fact, I believe that the permit has been received from the county.
And that's the last I
Is
know,
that
and
the
I'll
late-
let Mike address that in his manager's
Okay.
report coming up.
Okay, and then that's it.
Utility manager.
Good afternoon, Kenny Hall, Utility Manager. Just a reminder that the irrigation system is going to be shut down starting Monday. We're scheduled for 2 days, we're anticipating 3, but the irrigation system, just as a reminder, will be out. Our new employee, David Tuller, started yesterday. He came to us from U.S. Water. He's got about almost 20 years in utilities. The guy, he's got electrical, utility complete background. He is going to be taking over our collection system and doing a lot of our electrical troubleshooting, and with our irrigation system, he'll be taking that over. And the last thing I have is I had a meeting with the South Trail Fire Department inspector. We went out and walked our fire hydrants along Griffin Parkway, or Griffin Boulevard and down Griffin. Going over what we're gonna be, how we're gonna be, dealing with these unrestrained fire hydrants that they're gonna have to be changed over. What the fire department, how high they wanted them. We just went over various issues with them and got them involved as best we could. The chief for the South Trail is going to be letting me know. He hasn't gotten back to me yet on what their position is. We're gonna be attaching, Zenner came out with an attachment to the fire hydrants for the MIUs, so they're not going up on the poles, they can be attached to the fire hydrant, which gives us a couple more options, and we wanted to work with the fire department on what they thought about it and how we were gonna go about doing it. We're still waiting on a response from them, from South Trail on that one, and that's all I have.
With the irrigation being shut down for the 3 days, I know I read in Chris's report that you had contacted the HOAs.
Yes.
And how did you do that, by email or
We used the
phone
master
calls?
list. I went to the admin and we got the master list and we updated it and sent it out to all the HOAs and to the HOA president.
Okay.
And it went out on the bill and it went up on the website. We gave, I think, 23 days, I think was the 20, maybe 22, 21 days notice, 3 weeks notice
Okay.
to what was going on.
So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Tim Sapper is gonna be the contractor with BJ Enterprises, and he is anticipating 2 days he can get through all of them. We're gonna be doing 10-inch gate valves, 2 per pump, and then 3 check valves that are gonna be installed as well. He's anticipating 2 days. We're allowing for 3 days. And we'll be drawing down the tanks. So Monday morning, we should only have, 3 to 4 feet, because we're not gonna have anywhere to put that water, so.
Long straw.
Mr. Guy?
Thank you. Kenny, how much does a single hydrant cost, and how many are there in Gateway?
We are actually working on that. We don't have any exact number. I can give you a number from 520 to, I went off the 2015 utility survey, and it was over 500.
And
Every Wednesday, we are going out, 2 people are going out every Wednesday and doing nothing but fire hydrants. So we're anticipating at the rate they're going within, I would say 60 days, 2 months, I can give you an exact number on how many fire hydrants are in the district.
How much does a fire hydrant cost?
Standard changeover is about $3,000.
Poof.
Yeah, well, with the unrestrained one, it doubles. I mean, it's a real issue, and they're out on our main boulevard. So if we run into any issues out there with any of those fire hydrants, we're gonna have to shut that main line down.
Kenny, you said a while ago Griffin Drive, but I think you meant
Or
Griffin
Griff-
Drive and Gateway Boulevard.
Griffin Drive and Gateway Boulevard,
That's what I
excuse me,
thought.
yes. These are over 20, I believe 25 years. So the problem with us, especially on Gateway Boulevard, is if we have any issues with any of those fire hydrants, we are gonna have to shut down
We're up the
the
creek
whole
without a
show.
paddle.
It'll have to come down until they can get in there. We were looking at after hours, coming in at 2 in the morning and starting, with real low flow, but contractors,
You're gonna be phasing this, correct?
yes.
So if we're looking at budgetary, Griffin and Drive, because we had a budget we gotta worry about. If we're gonna be doing Griffin Drive and Gateway Boulevard and Commerce Lake, the 3 roads we turned over to the county, we talking 50 fire hydrants on those 3?
Yeah. that
So
would
if
be-
we use 5,000 times 50, what are we looking at, 1.25 million?
Over a time period.
So what my deal is Stephen, did you hear that? So when we talk here in a few minutes about enterprise fund, there's a capital deal right on top on that one. Then the other one is, while we're shut down, we have just come to learn that we have a meter on the discharge side of the 24-inch that apparently we didn't know that we had, that we now know we have, that we need to be able to monitor to measure flow going out into our system. Is there a chance, because this would be a perfect time to do that, to get that meter calibrated and fixed, and even possibly isolated at the same time?
It's under the 5-year period, and that's a Lee County meter, and they're by permit.
Wait.
They have to
That
calibrate
system's ours. That's not
Well,
Lee County.
the county, the county reports off of that meter.
Wait,
Thank you.
hold on.
They report that reading to us. It goes in on their monthly as the combined.
Oh, okay, if they're doing
Well,
that, then
and-
that's gonna generate, I was not of that understanding. That even opens a new can of worms then. they're basing billing information off of that. Has that meter been calibrated? Have they
Within the
given
last
us?
5 years, yes. I mean, that.
You
that-
don't do meters every 5 years, you do them every 6 months.
It's 5 years required.
Do what?
It's 5-year requirement.
Yeah, but the trouble is, it's our cash register. We need to make sure it's accurate. My point is that while we're shut down would be the perfect time to work with them and say, let's get that meter calibrated. What the issue is, we're trying to determine the water we're pumping out, one, to be able to project what we're gonna need, because we're getting frightfully scary close to our peak capacity of 8,000 gallon a minute, as you and I have talked about. The second thing is that we need to know if we're sending out 1 million gallon a day to our residents, are we collecting revenue for 1 million gallon a day? Or do we have leaks? Right now, we're of the opinion that we're pretty close in about a 6 to maybe 10% window of loss, which is not bad, not bad. But we're relying on some meters that got some real shaky results. So the perfect thing to do is if we can get and coordinate with Lee County Utilities while we're closed down, if nothing else, to recalibrate that meter.
I'll certainly talk to Ed. Tomorrow
Because
morning.
that's a critical meter.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
I think that was me.
That's all I had.
Okay. Thank you. Let me just ask, anybody else have any questions for Tim?
I'll wait till it comes out of the budget.
Okay.
Well, I think that's what he said a while ago.
Michael.
He acknowledged that we did
Next,
have the
Public
permit on
Works.
Bentley. We're waiting on the materials.
All right, that moves us to the consent agenda.
One thing, Public
Mike.
Works, in case we have any questions.
Mike.
They didn't
Oh,
miss
I'm
the,
sorry.
Mike?
You need to put him on the agenda, please.
I realized that I was
I
gonna make.
sent it out all as one item and she just put it on two, but we'll get it fixed.
Sorry, Mike.
For the record, Michael Tisch, Public Works Manager. So see, you've seen the report that I provided you, if anybody had any questions. I know, Mr. Tinkle, you had asked about Bentley. They're,
Yeah.
I called them last week, and they're just still waiting on materials to arrive.
That's on Griffin Drive?
Correct.
What about the park, the soccer park, on
I
the
am
lighting? We need to sit
getting-
down with them.
The fun park, what did you say? about-
Soccer park, they had done an estimate for us of what our ongoing future cost for repair and replacement of those 5 or 6 fields are, and they'd given us a budgetary number of, I believe, $30,000. The board wanted a confirmation of that and some type of a report back memorializing that.
Okay. I do have to meet with Bentley on a few items. We're having some issues on Gateway Boulevard with the lighting, so
Okay.
get with him to discuss that. And does anybody have any questions on any of my items?
Mrs. Flaherty.
Yes, thank you for answering all my other questions. The other question I did have was about the portable unit that you replaced. Because you said it was only 3 years old. Okay, and is there going to be any guarantee?
The
this one
unit,
you-
the unit that we had was inside the server room, and it was actually a little stand-up portable AC unit that wasn't functioning very well. Actually, we were getting alarms that our servers that run this whole district were shutting down. And I had to come in on the weekends to work on it to keep it alive. So we got a dedicated AC unit just for the server room.
Okay, so,
Computer servers
And it's
need to be kept at a low temperature to keep happy. If they're not, they stop working.
so there's some guarantee that it won't go in 3 years again? I'm just.
We have a warranty with it, I
Okay,
mean,
that's
and
what
we
I'm
have
wondering.
maintenance done on it. So.
That's what I was concerned about.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Computer rooms have to be kept really cold.
But I know, it's
Freezing
just 3
cold.
years old, and that's why I was questioning.
It really wasn't, it was a portable
Yeah.
system. It wasn't even a window shaker. It was a little stand-up unit that was undersized for the job it was trying to do.
Question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Not a question, but a comment. I've been with these guys for about the last 30 days. It seems like I'm working here now. And I'm telling you, we've got a staff that is taking this place apart and checking things like it's never been done in 26 years, both on the public works side and the utility side. They're looking at everything as to what should have been looked at many, many years ago. Unfortunately, they're bringing up some things that's going to cost us money, but I remember telling this board many, many times the shoe's gonna fall one of these days. And this stuff is old. It's got to be
Everything
replaced.
is old.
But I'm telling you, the staff, Mike and Kenny, are really taking this place apart, and they're doing a great job, so.
Thanks, sir.
Now we're into the consent agenda, right? Thank you, Mike. Anybody have anything they want to pull for the consent agenda?
A and B.
All right. Go ahead and start with A.
Yeah, and Madam Chairman, if I may,
Sure.
without stepping on Mrs. Flaherty's toes. I don't know what set of minutes you may have. I know there's a set of minutes in the minute book, and I had suggested, and
June 8th.
yes, I have a red line version of what I suggested, additional revisions to the minutes.
Okay.
And I can pass those out if the board wants to take a brief recess to review those. And because I went back and looked at the videotape. of that.
These are correcting the minutes that are on the
Yes,
book.
and it's redlined as to suggested revision.
Let's take 5 minutes.
You can pass those out.
Idea, thank you.
Margaret,
Doggone attorneys worth
we're gonna
his
need, we're gonna
weight
need more than 5 minutes to read.